All right, this is our review for the test. This is our practice quiz. Number 1 through 6 are state if the given functions are inverses. And I hope you remember, I think this was Wednesday of last week we did this. You put one function inside the other and solve for it, and if they are inverses, it equals x. All right. One of the things I kind of stressed, one of the best ways to attack this problem is to take the bigger function and put the littler function into it. It just seems to work out better. So if you look here, right, this is h of x, right? I wrote it out as a shell. Where there was an x, I put parentheses, right? Now inside of h of x, I'm going to put f of x, right? So now I'm going to go down here where there's an x in h of x, I'm going to put negative 2x minus 10. All right, so let's do the math on this. All right, we get negative 10 minus, all right, I've got minus a minus, so that's going to be plus 2x. All right, again, I've got minus a minus, so that's going to be plus 10. Plus 10. All right, all of that's going to be over 2. So let's look at this. I got minus 10 and a plus 10 on this line. Let me make this look better. All right, I got minus 10 plus 10. These two just cancel each other out naturally. Minus 10 plus 10. Now you've got, all you got left is 2x over 2. The 2's cancel out. I'm just left with x, so the answer is yes. These two questions are inverses. Number 2. All right, you could have did this one either way. There's really, both functions are about the same level of complexity. I've decided to put g of x inside of f of x. So I've kind of made f of x the shell. All right, notice negative parentheses, same as negative x plus 3. All right, now I'm going to put g of x on the inside, which is x plus 2. And I'm going to solve. All right, got a negative x, so it's going to be minus x, minus a positive, all right, is going to be a negative 2 plus 3 equals negative x plus 1. So obviously that doesn't equal x, so the answer is no. These are not inverses. Okay, number 3 is one of the harder problems on this practice test, so we'll take our time with it. All right, the larger, more complicated function is the g of x. So I use that for my shell. You can see g of x equals 1/3 parentheses plus 5/3. So I wrote it like the g of x. Inside the g of x, I'm going to put the f of x, x minus 3. All right, doing the math on this, I end up with negative 1/3 x. Negative 1/3 times negative 3 gives you plus 1 plus 5/3. All right, the next thing we want to do is connect or combine like terms. We get negative 1/3 x plus 1 is the same thing as 3/3 plus 5/3. We end up with negative 1/3 x plus 8/3. All right, it's pretty obvious that x does not equal, g of x does not equal x. So the answer for this is no, these are not inverses. All right, number 4 is the fourth one where we determine if it does have an inverse. And again, I keep repeating myself, but to find that out is we put one function inside the other and see if it equals x. All right, so I picked the fraction to use as my larger function. I'm going to put f of x inside of h of x. So I've got h of x written out here. And inside it, I'm going to put f of x. All right. So I've got 7x minus 5 plus 5 over 7. Well, the minus 5 and the plus 5 kind of cancel each other out. If you add 5, then subtract 5, or vice versa, it just equals 0. I end up with 7x over 7. And I hope you see that the 7's cancel out, and I'm left with an answer of just x, which means yes, these two are inverses. All right, number 5. All right, still trying to find out whether the two are inverses. I take one function and put it inside of the other. I'm going to use f of x as my shell, and inside it I'm going to insert g of x. So here's my shell, f of x. I'm going to put inside it minus 1/2 x plus 2 plus 4. All right, doing the math on this. I'm going to distribute the negative 2. Negative 2 times negative 1/2 x, right? Let's just take the numbers first. Negative 2 times negative 1 is going to give you a positive 1. And we brought the x, so this is just going to equal 1x. Negative 2 times 2 is going to give you a minus 4. And I bring down the plus 4 over here. These two cancel each other out, minus, plus. You just end up with x. So yes, these are inverses. Number 6. All right, the larger function here is the first one, f of x. So I used as my shell, 20 plus x over 5. I'm going to insert 3x minus 3, which is g of x. All right, now we get to solve. We end up with 20 plus 3x minus 3 over 5. All right, which equals 20 minus 3, which is going to be 17, plus 3x over 5. That's for all intents and purposes as far as we can take this. So the answer is no, they are not inverses. All right, starting with number 7, we got different instructions. What we want to do is find the inverse. All right, so here I've got g of n equals 5n. All right, first thing we want to do is make the function equal y equals 5n. All right, now we want to switch the variables. We end up with n equals 5y. Okay, now we want to solve for y. To do that, we want to divide both sides by 5. Okay, if we do that, the 5's canceled out, and we're left with y equals n over 5. Okay, to write that in the proper form, it's going to be g minus 1 n. Basically, that says the inverse of g. Whoops, I put x instead of n. Equals n over 5. So n over 5 is the inverse function for 5n. All right, number 8. f of n equals negative n plus 5. Finding the inverse, we switch the function to y equals minus n plus 5. All right, we switch the two variables. We end up with when n equals minus y plus 5. All right. First thing we want to do is subtract the 5 from both sides. We end up with n minus 5 equals negative y. All right, we have to get rid of this negative y. The way to do that is multiply both sides by negative 1. Multiply both sides by negative 1. So if we do that, y becomes positive. It becomes minus n and plus 5. All right, so now we got to write this in the proper form. It is f inverse of n equals negative n plus 5. All right, this is our third problem of this type, number 9 on your sheet. We're going to find the inverse of f of x equals 1 minus 1/2 x. All right, let's go ahead and set this up. Change the f of x to y. 1 minus 1/2 x. All right, now we switch the variables. And we solve for y. First thing I want to do is subtract 1 from each side. That leaves us with negative 1/2 y equals x minus 1. All right, we want to get rid of this negative 1/2. All right, to do that, we're going to multiply both sides by negative 2. The reason we're doing that is we want to get y by itself. And to do that, if we multiply negative 2 times negative 1/2, it becomes 1. It becomes 1y, and that's all that's on that side is a y. All right? Doing the multiplication, negative 2 times negative 1/2 is 1. So 1y, y. On the left side, we end up with negative 2x. Distributed the negative 2. Then negative 2 times negative 1 is going to be plus 2. All right, we've solved it. Now let's write it in the proper form. We get f minus 1, which is the inverse, x equals negative 2x plus 2. Number 10, finding the inverse of fx equals minus 5x plus 20 over 8. All right, let's do our usual of making f of x equal y, and then minus 5x plus 20 divided by 8. All right, first thing we want to do is switch the variables. We end up with x equals minus 5y plus 20 over 8. All right, first thing we want to do is do something about the fraction. It's all over 8. All right, so we're going to multiply both sides by 8. We end up with 8x equals minus 5y plus 20. That's all because these 8's canceled out. All right, next thing we want to do. We want to do something about this plus 20. We're going to subtract it from both sides. Or subtract 20 from both sides. We end up with 8x minus 20 equals minus 5y. Okay. Final thing we want to do now is divide both sides by negative 5. All right. If you do that, you end up with just y on this side and 8x minus 20 over negative 5 on this side. All right, that's not the best way to leave that. I'll show you another way to write it, but I will accept it either way on test. I just want to make sure that you know the mechanics for this. All right, we got to write this in function form, so it's going to be f of -1, the inverse, x equals, all right, probably the best way for the purpose of this to write this would be take that negative side and put it on the outside of parentheses and make it 8x minus 20 over 5. Several ways you could write this, especially this inverse function. I'll accept it in several different ways. I'll know if you did it right. But probably the way I would leave it for this test is like this. Number 11, finding the inverse. All right, let's just get straight to it. Y equals -1 minus 1/5 x. Switch the variables. X equals -1 minus 1/5 y. All right, I want to do something about this -1. I'm going to add 1 to both sides. I end up with x plus 1 equals minus 1/5. Let me clean that up a little bit. One-fifth y. All right, like we did, I think probably back on number 8, we have to do something with this -1/5. Okay, what you want to do is this is the coefficient to y. -1/5 is the coefficient to y. You want to make the coefficient to y 1, just so it's y by itself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply both sides by -5. -5. If I do that, -1/5 times -5 gives you a 1, and you're just left with y on that side. On the left side, you're left with minus 5x minus 5. All right, we can write that in its final form now. We have g minus 1, that's the inverse, x equals minus 5x minus 5. All right, our final finding the inverse problem. H of n equals -5n over 2. All right, go ahead and set the problem up. Y equals -5n over 2. All right, switch the variables like we have to every time. N equals -5y over 2. Solving for y. Now, we're going to multiply both sides by 2. If we do that, we end up with 2n equals, 2's cancel out, minus 5y. All right, to solve for y, we divide both sides by -5. 5's cancel out. We're left with y equals, and when you've got a minus sign like this, it doesn't matter where it ends up. We can just make this minus 2n, since it's only one negative sign, 2n over 5. Cleaning this up to write it in the proper form, we know that the inverse is written like this, and it is equal to minus 2n over 5. All right, I kind of did these a little bit backwards. Your last 6 questions on the practice test are the things we did first. But that doesn't make them any less important, and I still want to do them on this video. So here we have composite functions. All right, so in this one, you can tell the way it's written. It can be written in 2 different ways. We want to put g of x inside of h. So over here on the right, I've written out the shell for h, and now we just want to input the g. Minus 2x squared minus 2x. All right, if you do that, there's actually no solving on this. Minus 2x squared minus 2x plus 1, you're done. There was no more math you had to do, just basically get rid of the parentheses on this. All right, so if you make a composite function out of h and g, put g inside of h, you get minus 2x squared minus 2x plus 1. All right, number 14, composite function. We want to put h inside of g. All right, so I already got the shell for g written out over here, minus parentheses plus 1. I'm going to put h inside of it, like it says in these instructions, which is 3n minus 2. This is a pretty quick problem. You got minus 3n. It's going to just be negative 3n. And you got minus negative 2, which is going to be plus 2 plus 1. Your final answer for this composite is going to be minus 3n plus 2 plus 1 plus 3. Number 15. All right. In this one, we are going to put h of a inside of function g. All right. So I'm going to put h inside of it. That's the a cubed plus 4. All right. This one actually turns out to be a pretty easy one. 2 times a cubed is just going to be 2a cubed. 2 times 4 is going to be plus 8 plus the 1. And we end up with 2a cubed plus 9. All right, number 16. I want y'all to notice I wrote this different, but this is the same as the one on your worksheet. All right, this over here is the same way. It's the same thing as writing it like this. It means the same thing. It means that we're going to put the function g inside the function f. All right. So I've got my parentheses already written over here. You can see f of n equals n minus 5, so I put parentheses minus 5. I'm going to insert the g, which is minus 2n cubed minus n. All right, I can get rid of these parentheses. I end up with minus 2n cubed minus n minus 5, and we are done. All right, for number 17, all right. We are going to put this is another composite function where we're going to put h inside of g. You can see on the side how the two different ways that it can be written. All right, this one gets a little more complicated because we got a square going on. So I'm going to put h inside of g. All right, you can already see that we're going to have to do something a little different on this one. So 3t plus 1 squared, we're going to actually have to FOIL 3t plus 1 times 3t plus 1. All right, I'm doing this off to the side. This is like totally separate from this problem, but it has to be done. 3t times 3t is going to give me 9t squared. All right, outer 3t times 1 is going to give me plus 3t. Inner 1 times 3t is going to be plus 3t plus 1. That's going to give me, combining the middle terms, the final answer on this is 9t squared plus 6t plus 1. So up here, 3t plus 1 squared is equal to 9t squared plus 6t plus 1, and I bring down the 2. Can't forget about that. 2. That makes my final answer, 9t squared plus 6t plus 3. All right. There may be a question like this, so be ready to go back and remember how to FOIL a problem if you need to. All right, number 18, final question. Last composite function. We're going to put f of n inside of g of n. So I've already got f of n written out as a shell, 4 parentheses plus 2 to go along with the 4n plus 2. All right, so now I'm going to put f inside of g, which is n squared plus 3. All right, this one's going to finish up fast. I've I got to just do my multiplication. Got to distribute the 4 n squared. Then I got to distribute it to the 3 plus 12 plus 2. Bring all this down, 4n squared plus 14. All right, that's the end of our practice quiz. I would suggest if you're still foggy on any of this, watch the video again, go through it more slowly, or just come and see me. But please, watch the videos before you come and see me. All right? I spend time doing this. I think it'd be better just in your spare time to sit around and watch these than come to me and have me spoon feed it to you. So, good luck.